Hello and welcome. My name is Susan and I draw and share my progress here with you every day. Today, while I work on this portrait of a really cute girl in this reference photo that I picked with a super bright hat, I want to talk about something that's been on my mind with you. So, have you ever picked up your phone to check one thing and 20 minutes later, you find that you're still scrolling and couldn't tell a single thing that you just saw? For a while, I did this almost every night before bed. What bothered me wasn't the waste of time, it was that nothing actually went in. I was awake, eyes open, scrolling, but it felt more like being asleep with my eyes open. My kids called it brain rot. They find it funny and amusing to come across content online that's just meaningless yet addictive. Brain rot was Oxford's word of the day in 2024, which just means enough of us were describing the same feeling that the dictionary caught up to it. So I got curious, what's actually happening under the hood? How bad is it, and is there something I can do about it? So I learned that every time you swipe to the next video, your brain gives you a small hit of dopamine. And I knew dopamine was released during enjoyable activities. But the part that I didn't know was that dopamine isn't the feeling good chemical. It's the wanting more chemical. Your brain goes, ooh, what's next? Not, that was nice. And when a reward is unpredictable instead of guaranteed, you chase it much harder. That's not me being dramatic. It's the same mechanism a slot machine runs on. Same wiring, just different outfit. And it gets worse the more I dig in. You see, the average short video is shorter than the time it takes for one dopamine spike to rise and fall. So you're stacking half-finished hits on top of each other, faster than your chemistry can settle. It's less like snacking and more like never actually swallowing. And your brain adapts because that's what brains do. It starts expecting that pace, and then normal speed things like reading a really good book or a conversation that just takes a minute to get somewhere, it starts to feel wrong, almost physically uncomfortable sometimes. It got bad enough for me that even on my vacation with my family, I still feel like I had to be productive somehow. If I'm not multitasking, asking my agent to run something for me while I am out and about, I'm somehow a failure in life. Waiting for something has to be meaningful for me. It can't simply be I'm standing still or sitting around. While waiting, there just has to be something mentally exhilarating at the same time. And then I discovered that there's a test that neurologists have used for decades called the clock drawing test. So you draw a clock face showing a set time, say 10 past 11. It quietly checks spatial reasoning, planning, memory, and the way your hand turns what's in your head into marks on a page. One study ran different generations through it. On the computerized tests, everyone did fine. But on the clock drawing, the youngest adults did noticeably worse. Some, instead of drawing hands, just wrote 1110 in digital numbers. Their brain reached for a phone instead of a clock. Nothing's wrong with these folks. A whole kind of hands-on thinking has simply gone unused. Skills erode not because your brain got worse, but because you stopped asking it to do that particular thing. As someone who draws every day, that kind of landed because turning what my eyes see into what my hand does is the exact thing I practice in this sketchbook. So this concept shows up as scale too. A Yale study of 4.5 million adults found self-reported trouble with focus and memory in 18 to 34-year-olds, nearly doubled over 10 years. And for about a century, each generation scored a little higher than the last on cognitive tests. Researchers say that climb has now flattened and in places reversed for the very first time. That means we've been getting smarter and smarter generation after generation, and now we have plateaued. So the areas dropping the most is attention, reading comprehension, and memory. The good news is none of this is permanent or inevitable. So what do you do about it? Most of the advice points one way. Use less, screen limits, notifications off, phone in another room. That helps, but cutting back was never the part that lasts for me. When I only subtracted the phone, all I made was an empty stretch of time and emptiness. And that emptiness pulled me right back. I've always believed you can't just take a habit away. You have to give it something to become. So the better question wasn't what to cut. It was what to put in its place. A good replacement hands your attention a slower, earned reward instead of an instant one. Something that asks you to look, decide, and adjust rather than just receive. And this isn't just me talking. The research really backs this up. There's a study from 2009 where people doodled while listening to a super boring recording. And the doodlers remembered 29% more afterwards than the people who just sat and listened. The idea is that doodling keeps just enough of your brain occupied that it can't fully wander off, but not so much that it overloads, which is almost exactly the zone real focus lives in. And it goes further than doodling. A 10-week visual arts program with older adults found increased connectivity between the parts of the brain that handle attention, planning, and turning what your eyes see into what your hand does. Another study compared drawing, origami, and coloring. And drawing was the one that improved spatial reasoning. The same thing that clock test from earlier that I talked about is measuring. And then there's your flow state. You've probably felt it. You sit down to draw for what feels like 10 minutes, and somehow 2 hours are gone. That's a real measurable state. It shows up as a specific pattern in your brainwaves. And it is the exact opposite of the scroll and forget feeling you get from social media feeds. One is your brain is just simply checked out. And the other is your brain more locked in than it usually gets to be. I've talked about how drawing is where I lose track of time and forget whatever I was anxious about. This is the actual brainwave pattern behind that feeling. Drawing isn't just a wholesome alternative to scrolling. It's structurally the opposite mechanism. One trains your brain to expect a reward every few seconds for zero effort. The other really asks your brain to sit with something unresolved, a blank page, or a shape that isn't fully working yet until you worked it out yourself. You see, that's the muscle that just seems to be fading for all of us living in this day and age. So to build it back, pick up a pencil, draw something with intention. It could be the worst drawing you will ever make, as long as you force yourself at it for a dedicated period. So yeah, that's what was on my mind while I finished this one. Happy drawing, and I'll see you in the next one.